Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdicus Dave. Today I'm hanging out with Brian Berg and Danny Grimes from Total Party Kill Games. That's a mouthful, folks. How you guys doing today?
Good. How are you, man?
Good, Great. Good. So, how come you just don't use the abbreviation of TPK?
We do. If you're looking at the legal business, it is Total Party Kill Games. If you are, if it's just common parlance, TPK games.
Yeah. Could you not get TPK?
Oh, I probably could.
Okay.
We chose that. In fact, if you go to our website is totalpartykill.games.
Yeah.
It was too good. I couldn't pass that up.
Nice. Well, I know, from us, forming Nerdarchy and coming up with names, that was like a whole thing because we went through every iteration of nerd and geek before finally finding something that we could get all the properties for.
I want to know at least two really awful ones that you passed on.
Oh my god, it was like 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago. I couldn't even tell you, because also I feel like we came up with a bunch of cool ones that we couldn't get.
Mm-hmm.
So we hadn't gotten there, but when we did land on Nerdarchy, it was cool because it is in the Urban Dictionary.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We're at some point.
There's a lot of things that are in the Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that are there, but this one we could actually get the .com for, so that was the plus side. So what have you gentlemen been up to lately?
Oh my God! Well, Danny and I were both part of the Wizards of the Couch, a stream on Twitch. We were doing a lot of that. We've got publishing gigs going on. Danny's got his terrain business that he works on. So I don't think there's ever a dull moment. It's just we try to live in the now. So what's going on now? That's the key, right?
Well, right now you guys got a Kickstarter going on. It's doing pretty well.
We do.
Book of Monsters Might?
That is absolutely right.
So would I be safe to assume there will be monsters and might in this book?
There is. How did you know? It's new monsters, playable races, and unusual tactics. So we combine. I guess the gist of the book is that monsters are more than just hit points and AC. It is almost a little bit from the monster's perspective, that they're not there just to stand in one spot and be whacked upon 5 times in a round. So we want to give very cunning, clever monsters, as well as a whole bunch of new, fun, unusual, monstrous races that players can actually play. And we break down with tons of new tactics and abilities that monsters and monstrous races can use. So it's kind of a new twist on the usual monster books.
Yeah, and I think too, it comes from a place where we want both players and GMs to have resources that they can use. So much is focused on GMs, quite frankly, in this in role playing. So we wanted a book that players could buy and find a lot of value in, and for things that they could do with it too. And I think a lot of what you're going to find in this book, the things that attracted me, are the things I was doing ad hoc at my table anyway. I'd look down and think, okay, I could use these recovery dice to give my dragon a bunch of his hit points back. But honestly, I think it'd be cooler if I just extended the range of his breath weapon, because those jerk archers up in the corner are really irritating me. So I'll spend some of his hit dice that I would use for healing just to give him some extra little perk. This book is chock full of great ideas for all that. And even if you don't use exactly the thing that's in the book, it might inspire you to come up with your own things.
Yeah, you guys totally beat us to the punch with utilizing the hit dice, because from the very get-go, we saw it as this underutilized tool in the game. That and inspiration, right? They both have one function each, which is weird because obviously you guys thought the same thing that we did. As you looked at it and go, you can do a bunch of other stuff with this. It's just another resource, and I don't know how your games play out, but we hardly even use short rests. We have 1 or 2 combats in a whole session, and it's not even they're back to back, so no one's using their hit dice for anything anyway.
Are you saying that your players role play?
What? Yeah, it's Yeah, we always have like maybe one or two big combats as opposed to a bunch of little ones, and everyone goes Nova, uses all their stuff, and in our games, if you really want to wreck your players and mess with them, throw a third encounter at them because they'll never expect it.
Right. So, okay, I'm gonna share some dirty rotten tricks here. I actually have some bats that are new monsters in here, and by and large, like a vampire bat, which is essentially what this isn't that novel of a creation, okay? But to your players that are resting and do not hear these things come and bite you, and don't feel it, don't wake up, but don't recover the next morning after they've taken their long rest, they feel fatigued and haven't regained their hit dice, you're welcome.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, last night I was laying in bed, and I don't know why, but I'm like, I want to make a blood rhyme, and it's just gonna be like a blood ooze in the Arctic that instead of attacking your hit points, it attacks your hit dice. And then it's like once it absorbs X amount of hit dice, it just tries to leave, right? And I figure, it's an ooze in the Arctic, so it can probably like slink through some cracks or something.
Why limit it to the Arctic? This needs lots of room to play.
Well, I get, you know why? Because we're actually working on our Patreon rewards, and this particular one just happens to take place in the Arctic, and that's why it was in my brain, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well, isn't part of it too that, when this game came out, when the newest version came out, everybody thought they knew how it was going to play and how it was going to run, and it was designed to run in a certain way. But to counter what Dave just said a minute ago, my players they come from a Call of Cthulhu background, so they're all about investigating, and they play in 5e, but they're all about investigating, taking their time. They use that short rest all the time. Simply because they think taking a long rest is cheese. And they like out of the dungeon or retreating away all the time for a full night's rest isn't like what adventurers would do. They'd be constantly like on the ragged edge, just trying to keep enough hit points in themselves to keep going. So everybody has this different approach. And I think, again, what this book is about is, at its core, is about taking a different approach. And it's a serious upgrade to the ideas that were presented initially in this game. Like, hey man, now that we've played for a while and we all have developed our own styles for play, well, here's a book full of stuff that's inspiring. You can use it straight, or you can adopt or redact or whatever you want with it. Plus, let's face it, players like weird races. They want to play strange things, even if they don't work out. They want the opportunity.
And how many game masters honestly remember inspiration all the time?
Yeah,
right?
we have to keep physical objects on the table for both the players and the GMs to remember.
Yep. We find it really easy in the time of COVID, because VTT wise, it's really easy to keep track of things like that.
Sure.
You put it right, because everybody's looking at the screen. So sometimes when you're playing at the table, people are like, but when you're playing VTT, actually people are pretty focused, and we remember it a lot better now, but we still didn't have great options, even when you remember.
But speaking of options, we wrote recovery dice options very early when 5e came out, because like you said, we said, hey, here's this void of a great mechanic. And as cool as inspiration is, GMs do forget it all the time, right? And it's much cooler when the player can kind of control their own narrative, right? They can say, hey, right now I need to have my cool cinematic moment, right? At the cost of having less hit dice later to recover hit points. So we just continued to build upon that. And that book was reviewed very, very well. I mean, that got Endzeitgeist's 5 stars, seals of approval, and all that. And so that's what we kind of based, as Danny was saying, the whole framework of our monster abilities for this book. Now, for anybody watching, if you go to our website, totalpartykill.games, you can actually download that PDF for free, just because we're trying to promote it and you can see what the Book of Monstrous Might is all about.
And I think you can get to that link. You can get to that link through the Kickstarter too, right?
Through the Kickstarter as well. Yep.
Yeah,
So
down in the pinned comment, I had a bunch of links for you guys. So to make it easy, you don't have to look far. Just scroll down a little bit and click away. You can check that stuff out.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Yeah.
But like Danny was saying too, the Game Masters, this book is going to throw a lot of interesting surprises at you. And if you think back to your early days of D&D, why do you still remember the Rust Monster? Why do you still remember the Mimic? Because of the awe, the shock, the surprise, the wonder. That's
dicks.
what monsters are about, right? It's about those psychological scars, not just on the player or the characters, but also the players.
Yeah, they're classics. I was running an Eberron campaign, and one of the characters, there was an assassination attempt on one of the characters, and they were warforged. So, like, kind of a la Bag of Beans style, they threw some rust monsters at them.
Clever.
Yeah. So, what kind of playable races are you guys putting in this book?
So we have. Let's see if I can go down my list for you here.
While you're looking at that, Monsters Races is a weird thing with a strange history throughout D&D, because you still have those people that are really angry that gnomes are in the game, let alone a Monsters Race.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I think though what we look at is like the probability of people that are upset about stuff like that. Yeah, you can find people who are irritated, but I think everybody does understand at some base level that they're optional. All this stuff's optional, so you can choose to include or not include. And honestly, that's the job of a good GM, is to decide, I'm going to have a world without this or with more of this or whatever.
And the biggest complaint we hear is that 5th edition doesn't have enough options. Okay, well, you're probably wrong, but we are going to give you even more options. So for those players who want to play crazy, fun things, we got your back, right? We got you covered. And 5th is such a great system to design with, because I think if you take a system like Pathfinder, you can mess with the rules, but as you twist the system, you break bits, okay? Whereas 5e, you can do a lot with it. It's more malleable, and ultimately the things that you build aren't so impactful that it breaks the game. So it's a great design space to play in.
Yeah, because 5e works in big modular chunks where, a game like Pathfinder is all about these little tiny tweaks that you add up, 10 of them, and then it means something.
Because of all the silly things in Pathfinder, the favored class bonuses was my most ridiculous thing ever. So I get a plus 1/4 of a thing every time I go up a level.
Yeah. That when we moved away from 3rd edition, I'd like the streamlining of a lot of the 4e stuff, and then found its way into 5. It's when people are like, "Oh, but this game is so much more customizable," and I'm like, +1 and +2 is not customizable. That is it's like a list of minutia to me. I love the feel of 5e. Like when you take a feat, it does something that changes your character. They did a good job with that. But sometimes there is a little bit of sameness. Like when you level up, nothing really happens a lot of times, or it's the same thing that happens for kind of everybody. There's not a lot of choices.
If it were up to me, I would back feats back down to every other level and make them singular bits of awesome instead of one splat. Suddenly you're a master of everything, because I do feel that it's simpler and it's easier to understand, and you suddenly become good at it by spending a feat, but there's less of that growth and customization.
But I still have fun with it. But you were going to give us a list of playable races?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing that we have are gargoyles. Okay, like many of us were fans of the TV show, the cartoon, but also these are serious gargoyles. Like they're not cartoony. They're the real deal. They're pretty brutish, powerful, exactly what you would imagine from a stone gargoyle. Let's see. We have the Ruinok.
And I have to say, the art for our gargoyle does have a little bit of reminiscence to the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I saw the final piece come through, I was like, oh man, that's a gargoyle.
We have a humanoid badger men called the Ruinok, which we initially wrote for Starfinder, and we're now giving them their fantasy counterparts. They are going to be fun.
Quick question. Do they give an F?
I don't think so. No.
They have zero. They have zero to give.
We should probably sneak in a honey badger racial subrace.
Yes.
That would just be delightful.
Absolutely.
Or maybe just a honey badger class ability where like sometimes you go beyond normal badger into honey badger territory.
Yeah.
It's like Berserk Rage, only not.
Right.
But let's see. We also have the Eostrix, which are an owl humanoid. So they can take wing, but very wise, excellent eyesight. That would be pretty fun. And you can easily see where you could have like a snow owl subrace, that sort of thing.
Plus, you can creep people out by turning your head in that super weird way.
Absolutely.
That's like literally the only reason to play one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, let's face it.
It's like the turtle. Okay, you go in your shell. What else?
What do you got for me now, Turtle?
But then it gets a little bit darker. We have the Mortis, which are humanoid zombies that have returned and are actually playable characters with a semblance of their own humanity left, unlike a regular zombie. So those will be a ton of fun, because who wouldn't like to play a rotting corpse as a player character, right? We also have a half ghoul, kind of a similar scenario, except these are bred, so it's more of like a ghoulish bloodline. We have umbral elves infused with shadow. We have our elflings, which are like an elf halfling hybrid. The Briarborn, which are a plant race. The Dreadcap, which are a fungus humanoid. And a lot of us, and we all loved our Myconids from first edition, right?
I did. Yeah, for sure I did.
Now, I can't call... Like, we're all familiar with what we are calling the Brain Gorger. You know, it's an MFer is what I've heard it referenced as.
Yeah.
But we can't call it an MFer. We have to call it the Brain Gorger. But we're doing a Brain Gorger spawn, which is like a genetic hybrid of the MFers and their spawn. So that is going to be a delightfully fun race. And I think if you go to our Kickstarter page, you'll get to see some of that art.
You should have just named it an MFer.
I know. One of my writers, he called it that, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? Oh, I get it now. Yeah.
The term I ever heard of the term I've heard is FMF, because when you try to describe it without saying that, somebody just goes, "Dude, it's an FNMF," right?
Yeah. Pretty much.
So, but we also have other monsters like half giants. It's a lot of stuff that really needed to come into existence into 5th edition. And then we have, even cooler, we have ancestries and bloodlines. So I have a really nice mechanic on how to bring bloodlines and ancestries into 5th edition. So you sort of, let's say your character is, let's say you're going to play a dwarf, okay? And instead of choosing a dwarven subrace, maybe you want to play a fiendish or draconic or giant bloodline creature. So it's like it's a subrace that kind of bolts on instead of your normal one, replacing those abilities with different themes and flavors.
Yeah, and obviously, as the person primarily responsible for laying out this book and putting all the graphics together, every time Brian gets talking, like there's a page counter in my head that keeps going higher and higher and higher. And I'll respond sometimes to, Brian will spit out some idea in chat and I'll be like, page count, Brian, page count. He's like, who cares? We're making a big book. They'll love it. So I think that anybody who's looking at this book over there on Kickstarter, just know that when you get when you order that book, you're going to get a tome of cool stuff, chock full of art. The art is already rolling in now, and it just looks stunning. So it's really exciting.
Oh, I got one more race I guess I want to talk about too. There's a whole bunch I haven't mentioned yet, but like one of the other ones that I'm really looking forward to are the essentially Komodo dragon humanoids.
Oh, nice. Do they have a disease? Do they have a disease bite?
Of course they do, right?
Yeah. Come on, Dave. Come on. We're not amateurs here.
I mean, I'm just wanting to play a monk, one of those.
Yeah. Nice. Well, you know, we need a better Dragonborn, essentially, anyway, because the Dragonborn is probably one of like the lamest race. It's like one of the most popular, but like mechanically, when you break it down, it's like the lamest.
If only there was a system that could allow him to do cooler things with his own racial abilities.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do with Dragonborn is we let them use a bonus action for their breath weapon instead of an action.
Yep.
And I mean, and it's also weird. It's like they're I don't know. Dragon is right in the name, but they can't see in the dark. So, although in 5e, dark vision is weird anyway, because it's like so many races have it almost to the point where it seems like, why bother?
Right.
Well, they're trying to solve the torch problem. The torch problem has been with D&D since the very beginning. You know, everybody wants to make it realistic in the Underdark, but the truth is, just letting everybody see things is way easier.
yeah, that's true.
I know when we played VTT, when you really have it set up and working where you can have everybody seeing only what they can see, boy, that's super cool. But that is a lot of work. And I just kind of started saying, once 2 or 3 players are in the space, I'm just going to light it up because it's too difficult to manage otherwise. Somebody wants to do something cool and you're like, no, you can't see it. You're like, but they're like, they already can see it. So now you're fighting with your player about something their character can do. It's
that's an interesting conversation, because I think that as we go forward, like the coronavirus has already impacted D&D tremendously, right? It's driving players to new technology, forcing adaptation faster than it normally would have. And I think that's a good thing, okay? Because I too am like a late adherent to like Roll20, and the moment I did, I was like, "Why was I waiting? This is awesome!"
Oh my god, we still don't use it. We game online and have been for a while, but we still do most of the things theater of mind. We're just lazy. We're lazy DMs too, so we don't like write a lot of material. And I think a VTT really leans into that writing material and being prepared. Like we make up our maps as we go. They're like, yeah, you should draw a map. And I was like, yes, I'll have a map of the thing we're doing now.
See, I would almost disagree. Yes, there is a learning curve. I'm not going to argue that point. But once you get over the curve, or watch a few YouTube videos that teach you how to do the things, like I can do stuff on the fly in Roll20 now because you have all your tokens and everything saved in there already. Someone's like, oh, well, we want to go off course here and we want to go into this whatever forest. Google search whatever forest.
Yeah.
Trademark whatever forest. And just find a map, you slap it on, and boom, right? Drag some tokens, you're ready to go. So when you understand the tools, they're remarkable.
But I come from that lazy GM school too, and you're not wrong. I mean, it's just that you can with just a little bit of application technology though, like Brian said, you just go grab a map. Is it close enough? Yeah, it's a big cavern with some weird lights. Cool, that's good. And then you just put that up in front of players and you go. But I specifically I have a theater of the mind screen that I put up when we're not going to look at a map, when we're not going to worry about all the little details. I just put up a thing saying, we're in the theater now, and then everybody knows to
that's clever.
Sit back and just play in your brain, and it's fine.
I just slap my players. I guess I never thought about doing it that way. I like that.
Yeah, it's about, for me, it's about letting my players know like what's expected of them, and then giving them enough tools to achieve it. And then if they can choose to pick up the tools or not, that's not my job. But I just always want to set the expectation and then provide the right tools. And if I'm providing a map, they want to get tactical. It's just what they're going to do. They're going to start moving their pieces. If you don't provide a map, they don't think that way necessarily.
And speaking of maps, Danny, you are also doing the cartography for the Book of Monstrous Might. So as we go through the cunning tactics that we're giving the monsters, we also do these like adventure seeds where we'll give you a map, a scenario, a short little bit of fun. And we've already unlocked the virtual tabletop rewards. So people are going to get those maps for their own games. And they can either choose to use our scenarios or do whatever they want with them. But it's going to be really cool.
I think you put one of them up on the Kickstarter, didn't you?
Did.
Okay. Yeah, so that's just one. It's still a work in progress. Obviously, everybody who's going to go look at it, don't judge. But
totally judging. Judge.
Yeah. Dave's looking at it right now. He's like, I don't know.
No, I was looking at it earlier. I was actually digging on it.
But like that's what would go along maybe with draconic tactics. Here's this dragon temple that you could, throw down in front of people, and we're going to make that available as a big VTT piece, and obviously to be printed in the book too. So,
Dave, do you think that I should throw a revised Dragonborn in the book? Because it's not too late. I could make that. I would become the most popular person in gaming because I fixed that.
I think Danny's left eye's twitching.
Yeah, we were just talking about this, weren't we?
Page count.
Yeah. Wait, so do you have a favorite of the playable races?
Oh God,
I really do think that
I guess I haven't seen the stats entirely for the Komodo Dragon Men, and that's not what they're called. But that's the one I'm most looking forward to. Gargoyle will be a lot of fun too, and the zombie shit.
So the Gargoyle, are they just technically gargoyles, or are they something different?
Well, they are gargoyles, but they are essentially a kind that can reproduce, and they're capable of creating new splinters of themselves, which form into new gargoyles. And you're not limited to a single gargoyle type. So your gargoyle subrace could be a small, like scout-like one, or your traditional humanoid gargoyle, or it could be like a four-legged, Ghostbusters kind of looking dog.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you guys just made the gargoyle playable, or you attached your own lore to these particular gargoyles.
Absolutely. We have our own lore for all the content. Yeah.
And I think but there's still a range too. I mean, you can still, if you want to play the straight gargoyle out of the Monster Manual with some of these options, that's cool. Sure. It's really, again, just options that you and your GM have to come into agreement on. And I think when we talked about 5e earlier, more than most systems, I would say, this is a system that allows for and encourages negotiation between GMs and players. Hey, can I try this? And no slam on Pathfinder. I'm not a Pathfinder guy, but I also don't hate on Pathfinder. It's complicated. You ask a GM, hey, can I bend and tweak this? And like Brian said earlier, he's got to think, or he or she's got to think like, well, what are all the possible permutations of what might happen if I do this? Whereas in 5e, it's kind of like, yeah, I'll just give you advantage. Or, I'll just increase your speed, or whatever it might be. And those don't have earth-shattering game-wide consequences.
So can your gargoyles fly? I know that's a bugaboo for some DMs.
It's a later ability that they'll have to purchase.
Okay. That's when I don't actually care. I'm just like, whatever. You want to fly. But at first level, beware sleep. So
when I look at that sort of thing and I'm trying to balance, I look to the other existing races and say, are there other races that can fly? Yeah. The Aarakocra, they can fly right now. So is that game breaking? No.
I think the big pushback, honestly, with flying and with swimming, is that GMs since first edition have owned the third dimension.
Yeah.
And we use it frequently. My dragon stoops from above, slides by, laying down a cauldron of fire everywhere he goes, and then he's gone again, and you can't do anything, except fire your piddly little bow, And now players are claiming some of that space. So I think a lot of GMs are like, damn, man, I don't want to give up like my big advantage.
Yeah. I love it though.
You just gotta raise your game.
I love it because I'm like, oh, you're the only one that can do that, and you're up here with me in my space.
Yeah, exactly.
It just takes different ways to challenge them, you know?
Yeah. No, I find a lot of the things for like a flying character, especially at low levels, they're detriments. They're not advantages. Like, oh, you can fly over the thing and pull the lever. But, you know, like if you're in a combat and you take to the air, if you get dropped, you're dead. Like there will not be death saving throws more than likely. You're just going to be pretty much dead.
Well, one of the supplements I always wanted to see somebody do, or maybe just even an article, was treat flight in D&D like flight was in real life. Flight started with going in a glide path in one direction in a straight line, floating, let's say. The Wright brothers basically floated. But then later, now we have jets, right? So, like, it would be cool to see somebody implement fly more like that, where it's a gradual building process till finally you can do Superman-like stuff at the highest levels. Right. But, like, right now, it's like third level. I don't really recall how 5e fly works right off the top of my head. But it seemed like they kind of gimped it down to, like, be really slow. Like, you fly basically at your walking speed or something.
Yeah.
Who wants to fly at their walking speed? Keep it. Like, I'd rather just walk. I'll use the stairs. Like,
right.
Cardio. But if they would make float at third level, and then at sixth level, you could fly. You could really, hover and do all sorts of stuff.
Or, hey, maybe it takes a level of exertion because you're a big, heavy stone creature, and therefore you have to spend some hit dice to make that happen, right?
Yep.
But I thought of another really cool, some of the bloodlines that are, not bloodlines, some of the ancestries that are involved, which are different than bloodlines. An ancestry is, for instance, a half-orc. The standard assumption is half-orc, half-human. But in this book, you're going to have expanded half-orcs that are going to be half-goblin, half-orc, half-orc, half-ogre. So those are ancestries that expand that race considerably and be a lot of fun.
The Orog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or what was
I remember the Mulls from
Dark Sun.
From Dark Sun.
Yeah.
I always thought of them as kind of like orky, dwarvy, like crossovers. Like,
don't tell them that.
I know. It's blasphemy. I'm just saying. I always kind of played them that way, which again just goes to show that everybody interprets this stuff differently, and having more options is never a problem. This is the thing. Like, I've told some people about this book, and they're like, well, I've already got everything I need. I'm like, well, first of all, how do you know? Until you read it, come on. But also, more stuff is okay because you don't have to use it if you don't want to. Still cool to think about.
So you just made me think of a movie we watched last night. Apparently it was supposed to be released this year from Disney, called Artemis Fowl. It's on Disney Plus now. Fantastic movie, some really cool fantasy tropes there. But speaking of the moles or mules, I guess depending on how you pronounce them, they had the giant dwarf is one of the characters in the show. So, but a giant dwarf is really just like a person. But
yeah, I keep thinking back to Thor, the Avengers movie where you meet Peter Dinklage's dwarf, and he's like colossal, but the place he lives in is colossal, so he's like a dwarf compared to it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's also mythological dwarves, from Norse mythology opposed to the Tolkien dwarves.
Right.
I mean, those folks were making the weapons of the gods, so.
Right.
So the Kickstarter, you've like blasted through a bunch of stretch goals. I was just looking.
It was insane.
And you've got some cool people that are going to be showing up to work on this project.
Absolutely. So let's see. Some quick highlights. Obviously we've got Stephen Radney McFarlane, who freelancer formerly of Paizo. Got BJ Hensley from Wolf Lair and Hero Lab. Kristen Sowards over at Lost Spears Publishing. Jim Pinto, formerly of AEG. The list goes on and on and on, but these are really solid people in the industry.
Jim Pinto is working on a lot of stuff. I feel like you're kind of pigeonholing him there.
I totally am.
And he's doing it on purpose.
I'm doing it on purpose. Jim is one of my favorite people in the industry because I just love to talk crap to each other, and I did that specifically for
Perfect. In that case, you should have just said, "Oh, really?"
I feel like Jim's primary communication mode is ranting. So if I want to communicate with him, I just need to provoke a rant.
Yeah, so we're getting a really wide spectrum of people and creative input into this, and
I saw Alex Kamer's name, BJ Hensley. Yeah. You mentioned the name earlier. I don't know if you want to throw that out there. The people will probably recognize the name.
Yeah. There is another name that I need to add to the list. For people who haven't been following our updates on Kickstarter, Luke Gygax is going to join the project. And Luke Gygax is the son of late co-founder of D&D, Gary Gygax. And so he's going to do some really cool introduction work for us to kind of set the stage about what life was like back in the early days and how monsters were important and why they're important today. So it should be really, really fun read.
Yeah, back when Gary Gygax and Matt Mercer invented D&D. Yeah. And Dave Anderson.
They were both pivotal in 1974.
Yeah.
Right.
I believe Matt Mercer was being considered as a child in the future. At that time.
I love to cap on Matt Mercer, but I also have to really appreciate what he's done for the hobby. Yeah. Because I think, Critical Role really grew D&D and took it to a new audience.
They just went and brought back their live show, I think this past Thursday or the one before. I think it was this past Thursday. And they had 110,000 people watching live.
Yeah.
So I was in Chicago not terribly long ago for C2E2, back when you could go out in public. And across the street from our hotel, there's this massive line of people. And we're sitting there drinking at the hotel bar like we do. And looking and just wondering, is there a concert going on? What's going on? And holy shit, why are all those people wearing D&D shirts? Yeah. And I swear I see like 2 or 3 people with D&D shirts. That's pretty cool. Yeah, they were doing a live event right across the street from us.
Yeah, we were going out to LA to be on Geek and Sundry with Satine, and we had met Matt, and he's a real nice guy, and he's cool. But we weren't like fans at that point. Right. And more so like Ted than me. Like then later Ted started watching all the shows and watched the first campaign and the second one. I'm not a huge fan of watching stream games. I think it's cool that they're there and people can watch them. It's just not my thing. So the last time we were at Gen Con, we were in the lobby of the hotel waiting for somebody, and a couple of the Critical Role guys come in, Towson, Jaffe, and Matt Mercer. So we went up to say hi, and Ted totally fangirled out, and he's got his Taladori book with him to get it signed, and he couldn't talk, and he's like, oh my god, I've never been so embarrassed in my life.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, because we've met him before, so which made it even kind of funnier.
Yeah, I think too, the vibe that I get off those guys is, and gals too, is that they are just like us, but they're doing their version of it the way they can do it with their skill set and their connections and their resources. Why wouldn't you? If that's your jam, and you're already a voice actor, and you've got connections with people with cameras and studios,
yeah, for sure.
Of course you're going to do it that way. And the fact that I don't want to do that way here with my group, that's cool too.
The problem is when we try it, it looks like this.
Yeah. But hating on people for providing a quality, and I don't think there's any question it's a quality product. It's a fun thing to watch. These people's hearts are in the right place.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I don't get it. Like, scroll on, man. If you don't
Yeah.
dig it, scroll on.
Oh, yeah, I've interacted with Matt on, half a dozen occasions. I think at this point, he's always been super stand-up, nice guy. When we did our Kickstarter, he donated the forward for us. Like, we offered to pay him, and he's like, nah. I mean, we ended up like making a donation to a charity of his choice. But I mean, he was super cool about it. He's like, you guys have done a lot for the community, so I don't want anything for it. Yeah, so all of our interactions have been really cool with those guys, and it's just super cool to have people like that lifting up the community and outreaching to more people. That now we have so many people that know what D&D is, but they don't even play the game, and I think that's cool. Because you know what? Someday they may play the game, or they can wait tell somebody else about the game that plays the game.
When I go to cons, it always shocks me to see the demographic, because it's different from convention to convention. And I see tons of young girls who are like, oh my God, we love D&D. It's the greatest thing ever. I'm a Matt Mercer fangirl, and it's so interesting because their perspective is, we've always wanted to play D&D, but we didn't know how. And we didn't know where to go and how to get into it, right? So Critical Role is also that outlet where people could go and watch the game being played and kind of learn through osmosis before trying their own hand at it.
Yeah, and there's so much of that now. You can see the game played in so many different ways.
Yep.
And I think for so long, wasn't the advice, hey, go to your friendly local gaming store. And I'm a super big fan of friendly local gaming stores, as long as they're friendly and as long as they're inclusive. Right. And I don't mean they have to be inclusive to the nth degree and, have every problem ironed out that they might have. But I got to say, I've only really been in 2 stores my entire life where I really felt like there was like a super welcoming presence. And I think some of it has to do with the fact that RPG sales in some of these places are dwarfed by miniatures sales, and it's easier to set up a Warhammer tournament than it is to necessarily
or Magic. Magic is the other thing,
and Magic is big too. There's other things competing, and those are definitely much more competitive spaces. So you've got this room full of hyper competitive people. You're trying to make it into a friendly place for people who just want to talk about their elves' feelings, and like it's a little bit of a disconnect. So virtual and watching the shows, I think it fills a big void.
It does. I like going into hobby stores because I travel a lot, and I try to visit all of them that I can. And when I do, the first thing I notice is that generally the hobby store is not run by a business person. It is run by a fan, and they have one fandom, and it shows.
Yeah. And I'll go on record as saying, typically, not always, typically gamers are terrible business people. So there's that. No, so there is a movie called Of Dice and Men, nothing to do with the book. Kelly Slagle and Seth, his last name is evading me right now, Pulaski, is my attorney, and they're the ones that kind of did that movie, and it's like a dramedy, but gaming is very central in it. And there is one scene in that movie where one of the female gamers, or one of the lady gamers, is in the game store, and it just totally epitomizes why we've had less women in the hobby, because it covers this obstacle where they have to prove their fandom. Right. And a lot of geek and nerd culture is like that for whatever reason. Like, I've never experienced it, but at the same time, enough people have said it for me to know it must exist. And I just don't get it. I just find it baffling of why people be so...
We're still trying to overcome some of the most basic problems like this. Right? But
right.
I was talking to on another show when today's new audience, which is about 40% women, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, maybe 20 years from now, when they are the writers, designers of television shows, games, board games, the landscape is going to change. Because I think many of them today, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of women in the industry, but we have room for way more, right? And way more people of color and way more inclusive everything, okay? But those people that are really getting into it now, it's going to be interesting to see where they carry the hobby and splinter the hobby and grow the hobby 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah, I am completely excited, to see where things go. And like you're hearing stories now where kids are like talking about, oh, like, D&D's the cool thing, or I'm not cool enough to play D&D. Not that that's a good thing, but it's just such a change from what we experienced growing up. The paradigm shift is
trying
crazy.
not to get stuffed in a trying not to get stuffed in a locker with your DMG.
Yeah. The world is changing. I actually want to jump back into the chat. There was a question a little while ago from Kamo. Favorite weirdest new monsters in the book?
Oh God. So let me take a look at my list of monsters here.
Boy, that's tough.
It's like picking your favorite child.
Right.
I'm a sucker for the owls. I those are the kind of characters I like to play, because I like to have a character that has information for people. So I don't need to be the baddest fighter. I don't need to be the quickest rogue. I just like the idea of being able to lean in and say, I found something out and I think it's going to really help. And have everybody give me the love for that. So I think
okay, I'll just run through a handful of these. Let's see. Without giving away too many of them. One of the fun ones, we have a rust mimic. So a mimic that also has the properties of the rust monster, and so has teeth like rusty nails. Just delightful. And again, when I kind of alluded to this earlier, but all the monsters in here are designed to delight. So they should provide some wow, some weirdness, some craziness that you're going to remember for a while. We have a desert troll that is not yet completely named, but it is like a desiccated husk of a troll. It's going to be confused with a mummy very, very easily, okay? But it awakens when disturbed, and of course, that should ensue a lot of hilarity as they find out what it really is. We have, let's see, the Chatterbox, which is a shrunken head of a spellcaster that's still capable of casting some spells.
I forgot about the Chatterbox.
There's just a lot of really mean things in here.
And on the Chatterbox, in our current game, which is a kind of a holdover from our last campaign, we have Bernie. Bernie is a shrunken goblin head that is essentially animated, alive, whatever you want to call it, that can be used as a spellcasting focus, and he can cast like one spell a day. So like our wizard in the last campaign had him as a magic item. He was given to one of the other characters that's in this current campaign. He is now our sage and spellcaster of the group, because we don't have any traditional spellcasters. So so for all things arcane, we refer to Bernie, and he speaks and he sounds like Bernie Sanders when he talks. So
that's outstanding. I cast magic missile.
Yeah, exactly.
At the darkness. I love it.
Yeah, and it definitely has to have that chatterboxy thing where it's like, I'm gonna cast magic missile.
We also have the infestation golem, which is a golem that carries swarms. That'll be a lot of fun. Like, imagine critically hitting on a clay golem and releasing a swarm. Thanks, DM.
Swarm of rock grubs.
Jesus Christ. Yes.
Ooh,
That one might be part of the flesh golem. Yeah, I like that.
a cone attack of rock grubs.
Oh yeah, so nasty, so gross.
So
But
gross.
the whole point is we want to give monsters that uniqueness, that wonder again. And so, I mean, yes, there's a bunch of new monsters, but also a ton of new monstrous abilities that you can just bolt on to the existing monsters in the monster manual and pull out fun surprises as you need to spice up your game and your combats.
What is that? What is the toughest monster or ability that you guys have added?
Oh,
Ooh.
wow.
Um,
I should add, it's hard to know because there are literally there's hundreds.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's hundreds of things in this book.
Yeah,
There's like 90 or 100 pages just of new monster abilities. So, off the top of my head, I don't know.
do you roughly know the CR breakdown?
Of the monsters?
Yeah,
It ranges widely. So there's a lot of low-level ones because, God bless them, 5th edition, you can actually play low-level monsters again, and it's still fun. All the way up to some really nasty stuff. Like I have a Titan tree in there that is, it's like a treant, only much, much older. Yeah, and so that thing could be horrific. That's probably closer to CR 10, 12. I don't remember exactly what it was, but
It's basically a Tarrasque tree.
well, it's just don't even get stepped on it. Good Lord.
Yeah.
We created a monster for Whose Monster Is It Anyway on the Wizards of the Couch channel.
okay.
And that was something we called the Velocirat. That's yeah.
Is
The
it really
audience
fast?
the audience picks out the abilities and stuff, and we kind of hammer down the details. But
Yeah.
it ultimately ended up to be a very, very challenging vermin. So
Yeah.
all
Well-
kinds of fun, nasty stuff.
Quicklings in 5e are a monster that hits punches. They punch above their weight class, and if you want to be really mean, haste them.
Yes. Yes.
That is mean. Yes.
Yeah, I felt like I had a party that was like probably 10th to 12th level, and hasted quicklings was brutal.
Well, they were bad in like 2nd edition.
Yeah.
In fairness, I still have a big love for 2nd edition D&D because their monsters were scary. Like, do you remember getting hit with like whites or whatever, and they would literally drain your XP?
Yeah.
Nothing was scarier.
Yeah, there was the thing beyond them that took levels.
Right.
Like you lose a level. Can you imagine like modern players like
Right.
I don't know if they
worked hard for that. How dare you?
Yeah, I don't know if they would be into that. I don't know if they'd be into that. Yeah.
Definitely not. I mean, there aren't many monsters like that in 5e. Like with Volo's Guide, they started kind of like putting it back a little bit with monsters. Oh, you fail by more than 5, you get this extra bad thing that happens.
Right.
But in the monster manual, the meanest thing is probably the shadow. Those things are another thing that they're only like a quarter CR. They're really low, but they hit so hard. Again, like 8th, 9th level characters, I had a tomb full of shadows that just totally decimated them. They would just come up from that was, I think it was the only time they ever ran away.
That's the thing, though. There is something ingrained in players that they don't realize that they don't have to stand and fight, and they don't have to win. They can flee, and sometimes that is just as important.
You know, and I wonder if that's not something that should be that could be the subject of future writings, which is how to play this game. And I don't mean just the things that people usually do, which is like optimized builds and all that kind of stuff. More just like, hey, there's 3 modes you can operate it in: investigation, attack, and retreat. And like you can be winning in any of those scenarios,
Right.
Because people just don't really think that way. They're either all in, or in my case, I have little older players. They don't necessarily want to engage. Like, you're adventurers. You're here to lean in. And they're like, well, let's just deliberate about it a little bit. Let's put a pin in that. We'll table it, and then we'll come back, circle back for synergy.
I'm pretty sure they killed 12 more villagers.
Yeah. And like a good GM says, okay, the price for doing that is 12 more villagers are going to die. You might know some of them, especially this one, Tim. You know, like everybody's like, oh, geez, Tim's going to get killed. Well,
Timmy.
You guys have inspired me. A future video will be playing D&D like a coward.
yes.
Fantastic.
I don't even know what that means yet.
How to live big in retreat.
Well,
Mr. Robin.
I mean, we in one video, I think we did a video about playing every game like it's a one shot. Yeah. People get really precious with the characters, I guess. Especially, I don't know if it's more of a newer thing with gamers, but we came from there were definitely games that you could play in that where you just show up with a stack of characters, because that was like the purpose, right? See if you can make them through. And then was it Dungeon Crawl Classics? That's like a mode for them. It's like come with a stack of characters, whichever one survives, if any do, that's going to be the character you're going to play this campaign with.
I think it's important, like super important, to talk about the theme, talk about what kind of a game you're going to have. Because people they get sensitive about that. And if you're from the new school where you're like, I'm here to tell my heroic story, and you get just waxed in round 2, that might sting a little, So
the worst one is when it's like, I'm here to tell my story. Now, this adventure is called the Temple of Shadows.
Right.
What? And Dave is running it.
Right.
Okay. And then later that night, that character
the Fane
looks like this.
of Creant.
Yeah. The fun thing is players that want to show up with pets, right? So I'm kind of hands off if you keep your pets out of combat, but once they enter the fray, they're fair game. And they don't do very that is one of the places where the 5e really falls down on the pet type classes.
Ranger.
Yeah, I know. It's so harsh. Actually, my only issue with the Ranger Beast Companion is it just doesn't have enough hit points. That's the only thing I'm like, if it just had more hit points, because eventually you split your attacks between it. It's like the problem with it is Hunter's Mark is less valuable to you, and that is the bread and butter of the Ranger for Beast Companion, and they just don't have enough hit points because you quickly get to the point where they can be one-shotted fairly easy.
Yeah. Hey, it sounds like an option they could use their hit dice for.
Yeah, but I don't know if using your hit dice saves you from being one-shotted.
No.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I had played with the idea of a hit point pool. Where actually the feature of the Ranger is you actually just get extra hit points for your Beast Companion, and as long as both of you as long as one of you still have hit points, you both still have hit points.
Right. You know what? We do. I guess I want to say one more thing about the monster stat blocks that I really, really love. One thing that's always bothered me is, as the game master, you have these monsters and you have the encounter, and then you have to figure out what kind of loot do they have? Why is there not a D6 table on the page of the monster?
Yeah.
So the game master go bloop. Oh yeah, and it had this. Done. Solved.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dave.
That would make sense, and it makes it very specific to that type of monster.
Yeah, because we include names right now. We never used to do that. Now we include names that could be used for this monster or whatever, or for a playable race. Having a little loot chart would be really nice too.
I will say though, naming the monster makes it harder for the players to kill them. Matter of fact, if you want to really sucker punch your players, there's 2 things you can do. 1, give the monster a name and have it get introduced to the players. 2, put a hat on it.
Really? They just don't.
All my monster NPCs get a hat.
Now they just look too cute in their cute
Like a
hat.
magical hat, or what are you talking about?
Just a regular hat, Just depends, I had one of my NPCs was Gentleman Jack, which was a Grell with a Jeff cap and a monocle, just kind of wedged in that gray matter.
I love it.
And he's one of my Underdark information brokers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had Stanley the Beholder that would wear a bowler cap.
Nice.
And he was imprisoned, and so they had to go through his prison that he couldn't pass out of. And he decided to spare them because they were interesting. So then they would come back and visit him. Eventually, he turned on them. All of my monster MPs eventually turn on them.
Oh yeah, of course.
But you have to build up those connections first. So
where did we say we were meeting? Skullport?
yeah. So one final question before we head out, because it's about that time.
You bet.
Eric wants to know, have you considered doing some work focused on domesticated or economically important creatures? Slather yourself in the bile of XYZ, then go in and get the Narc Blazer's scat for resale.
I guess that's probably not in the scope of this book. But that's not a bad idea. Like, I think as part of the monster tables of loot, things like that will be included, right? So I'm struggling to come up with a great, but okay, we have iron ants as one of our monsters, and so nodes of ore or something like that could be part of their treasure tables. Or their antennas might be valuable,
Mythic Odysseys, they've got a monster in there. The rams, you can shear them, but the wool has magical properties. But if you harm them or kill them, the wool is useless.
So interesting.
So which is kind of interesting, and it'd be even more interesting if it was a dangerous monster that you had to figure out how to get the thing from, but you can't just kill it or beat it up and take it.
Right. Ooh, delightful.
Yeah, they're all just vectors on how to include the monster in your style of game. If you're playing a game with kids, almost like a no thank you evil style game where you're not going to get all bloody and dark about it. If you had other things to pursue, like discovering or collecting or investigating, having some things in there about that would be a cool idea. Sounds like volume 2, right? Volume 2.
We will do a volume 2 of this. And we're still working on the outline of what kind of content that will contain.
So with that, we're gonna head on out. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for stopping by. Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to talk with you. I don't think we've met before, Danny. It was great to meet you, and Brian. It's been way too long.
Absolutely.
So with that, until next time, stay nerdy.